Hey guys, today we'll explain how to change the travel on your Selva fork. The tools you'll need are medium Loctite, Formula fork lubricating grease found in the aftermarket box of your fork, the Formula FX suspension oil, also supplied standard with your fork, a 10mm wrench, a small flathead screwdriver, a 4mm hex wrench, a second 2mm hex wrench, a syringe to insert the oil, the Formula high-pressure suspension pump found in the box of your Selva, and the tool for opening the fork cap, also included with your fork. To do this procedure, we advise you to remove the fork from the bike and mount it horizontally on your workbench using a vise. To do this, you can use the special Formula fork clamp to mount the fork into the vise. If you don't have one, you can also use a normal bike stand. Once the fork is in position, proceed to closing the lockout by rotating the golden lever on the damping side. Now you can remove the rebound adjustment. Using a 4mm hex wrench, remove the screw at the base of the lowers on the damping side of the fork. Once this is done, you can also remove the screw at the base of the lowers on the air side. In the case of a 2-air technology fork, first proceed by removing the bronze cap on the negative chamber located on the base of the lowers on the air side. Now, connect the Formula pump. Operate the quick connector, and slowly remove all of the air from inside the negative chamber. Now, using a 10mm wrench, you can unscrew the air valve. From here, remove the fork from the vise. Place it in a vertical position above an oil collection tray, pull out the stanchion slightly by applying light pressure upwards on the arch, and release all the oil inside the fork. Once done, you can put the fork back in the working position. Then, remove the through axle. Once you have put the fork back in the working position, you can proceed to extract the lowers. We advise you to invert the lowers to drain in an oil collection tray, as residual oil may still come out. Now remove the black cap that protects the positive chamber's air valve. In the case of a 2-air technology fork, the positive chamber's cap is silver. From here, connect the Formula pump and activate the quick connector. Once the pump is connected to the valve, remove the fork from the vise and place it in a vertical position. At this point, slowly release all the air in the positive chamber. The vertical position prevents any rotation of one or more neoposts if present in the fork. For all information on neoposts, click the superimposed link appearing now. Once completed, you can put the fork back on the vise in the working position, and you can disconnect the pump from the positive chamber valve. Now you can proceed to unscrew the top cap of the air side using the tool found inside the aftermarket box of your fork. At this point, with the help of a flathead screwdriver, remove the retaining ring inside the bottom of the stanchion. Now pull the rod out until the negative spring is visible. Put the rod in a diagonal position and place the head of the negative spring against the edge of the stanchion itself. Now apply a slight pressure to the base of the rod so that the negative spring can disconnect from its top part. At this point, you can extract the rod from the stanchion along with the negative spring and the piston. In the case of a 2-air technology fork, proceed as follows. With the help of a small flathead screwdriver, remove the retaining ring located on the inside of the stanchion. At this point, you can proceed very easily to remove the rod from the stanchion along with the negative chamber and piston. From here, insert the necessary spacers as shown in the video and then apply pressure on the spring so that it connects to the spacer correctly. We remind you that inside the aftermarket box of your Selva S you will find 4 spacers, 2 10mm and 2 20mm. Now, apply a light amount of Formula suspension grease to the O-ring on the piston head. You will find the grease tube inside the aftermarket box of your fork. In the case of a 2-air technology fork, changing the travel is slightly different. In the aftermarket Selva R box, you will find 2 spacers 10mm thick. The spacers in this case can be either black or white. First, apply a drop of medium Loctite on the spacer screw threads. In this case, we are mounting only 1 spacer, so we will use the shorter screws. If you would like to mount more than 1 spacer, you will have to use the longer screws that come with your fork. Insert the spacer on the rod as shown in the video. Make sure the spacer is firmly placed. Now, you can proceed to tightening the screws that hold the spacer. The necessary torque is 0.03 Newton meters. In some models of forks with 2-air technology, it is possible that the single spacer is formed by 2 half circles and not by a single circle. The procedure in this case does not change. You can proceed with the installation of the spacer as shown in the video. At this point, apply a small amount of Formula suspension grease to the O-rings as shown in the video. To ensure optimal smoothness, we recommend that you gently clean the inside of the dust seals using a dry paper towel. Then you can apply a light amount of Formula suspension grease to the inside of the dust seals. Now you can proceed by reinserting the negative spring rod inside the stanchion on the air side. After inserting it and putting it into position, you can reinsert the retaining ring, making sure that it is properly installed as shown in the video. In the case of a 2-air technology fork, the procedure does not change. Reinsert the rod inside the stanchion on the air side, and once in position, secure it by reinserting the retaining ring as shown in the video. At this point, fill a syringe with 2.5 cc's of Formula FX suspension oil and add the oil to the top of the air side. You can now screw the top cap back onto the top of the air side using the special tool found in the aftermarket box of your fork. Apply a torque of 30 Newton meters. For this step, if you do not have a vise for working but instead are working with the fork held by a bike stand, have someone help you to keep the fork in place, making sure that it does not rotate when applying the torque of 30 Newton meters. Now, connect the Formula suspension pump to the positive chamber valve, activate the quick connector, and enter the desired air pressure. After this operation, you can disconnect the pump from the air valve. Once this is done, you can screw the black cap back on to protect the air valve. We remind you that in the case of a 2-air technology fork, the cap that protects the positive chamber valve is silver. You will notice that at the base of the rods, both on the damping side and on the air side, there is a small flat spot. Orientate both rods by rotating them to align the flat spots to coincide with the back of the fork. Before proceeding with the reintegration of the lowers, make sure that the stanchions are well cleaned. In this case, we recommend using a dry paper towel and a mild detergent. From here, you can put your lowers back on the stanchions, being careful not to push your lowers all the way down. This is crucial for reinserting oil into the lowers. Now, fill a syringe with 15 cc's of Formula FX suspension oil, and through the port at the base of the lowers on the air side, inject the oil into the fork. Once this is done, refill the syringe with another 15 cc's of Formula FX suspension oil and inject the oil into the port at the base of the lowers on the damping side. At this point, with the help of the Rebound Adjustment, apply a light amount of Formula suspension grease to the O-rings on the 2 screws at the base of the lowers. After this, apply a light amount of medium Loctite to their threads. Now you can push your lowers all the way in, making sure that they are in line with the internal rods. Use a 4mm hex key and tighten the screw on the damping side. Apply a torque of 7 Newton meters. Once this is done, unlock the fork by rotating the gold lockout lever to the open position. Now, after pushing the lowers all the way in also on the air side, make sure that the rod is well aligned with the lowers. Once this is done, use a 4mm hex wrench and tighten the screw on the air side at the base of the lowers. Apply a torque of 7 Nm. In the case of a 2-air technology fork, apply a slight amount of grease on the O-rings of the negative chamber valve. Once this is done, apply a slight amount of medium Loctite to the valve threads. Then screw the valve back into the base of the lowers on the air side using a 10mm wrench and applying a torque of 7 Nm. Proceed to closing the lockout by rotating the golden lever on the damping side. Now, with the help of the Formula suspension pump, insert the desired amount of air into the bronze negative chamber. After this, screw on the bronze cap to protect the negative chamber valve. At this point, you can disengage the fork lockout. To finish it all off, insert the rebound adjustment back into its position. This completes the procedure to change your travel either on your Selva S or Selva R. At this point, you just need to mount the fork and tear off on your favorite trails.